It's funny the way we can slowly start to believe kids are in the way, how we can start acting like they're keeping us from our day, like their needs are annoying and their voice is too loud. And can't I just sit on the couch? God has continually been working on this in me, reminding me they aren't in the way of my work. They are my work. And it's my God given responsibility to show up for them like I would a job I care about. I'm hardworking, not dragging my feet. I'm focused, not distracted by lesser things. I'm present, not attached to my phone. I'm positive, not grumpy with the tasks. I'm creative, creating solutions for a functional and happy home. There's nothing worse than a person who's grumpy at their job and makes you feel like an annoyance for asking them to do what their literal job requires. And yet, how often do I treat my kids that way? Grumpy about the dishes, frustrated by the bickering, annoyed at their questions, bothered by their needs. The irony is that they are the literal reason I am at home on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mama, they aren't in the way of our work. They are our God given work. Elizabeth Elliot said, "Here, not somewhere else, I may learn God's way. In this job, not in some other, God looks for faithfulness."
Mm,
Loved that
so
introduction.
good.
It's just from an Instagram person. Her name's Catherine Christie. It's what we're going to be talking about today, when motherhood is your job. And I just thought that was so thought provoking. And, I did that. I had kids at home for a long time. We talked about this, recently on a recent episode. And it just helps when you think about it as your job. So that's going to be part of what we talk about today. But
Mhm.
this is Looking Up. We're a podcast for Christian women. My name is Carla Moore. I'm in Texas. My friend Kathy Pollard is with me. She's in Kentucky. And we love to get together and talk, just have a chat every week about things that are important to us and hopefully important to some of you out there. Uh, but before we get started talking about our topic, we like to just have a little discussion about things that have happened over the weekend since we haven't seen each other. So, what's going on? You said there's been storms there.
Yes, again. Yeah, we had big thunder and heavy rains and winds and watching the tornado thing, and all that kind of stuff. But then what I was telling you was that was right before we went to bed. When we got up this morning, the skies were blue, the sun was shining, the birds are singing. It's such a huge, huge contrast. And it's amazing to me how that happens. It looks like a
Mhm.
completely different location, time of year, everything.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to you when we were chit chatting about it that it's so symbolic of life in general, how things can seem so overwhelming or difficult or gloomy. And something comes along and reminds you that God is good and blessings abound and heaven awaits and everything's
Mhm.
going to be okay. Joy comes in the morning.
Joy comes in the morning.
Joy comes in the morning. That's right. So,
Oh, I'm glad I
but
could see sunshine on your face.
yes, I even had to close the curtains because there was so much coming in. It was washing out the entire screen.
Hmm. That's a good
I'm,
problem to have.
it is. I love it. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I should have mentioned at the start that our theme is looking up, and it comes from Colossians 3, 1 and 2, and talks about how we want others to look up, not the things on the earth, although we're looking at the sunshine and the flowers and the birds on the earth, but how all of that points to God. And we try
Mm-hmm.
to make this podcast encouraging and something that helps others to see the goodness of God. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that today. Yeah. Have you planted
So
anything yet?
I have not. Mm-mm. I
Is it
haven't
not
planted
time?
anything. Not quite. I mean, I could be doing some indoor seedling kind of things, but I've piddled with that a little here and there,
Mhm.
and I just decided I don't want to. I just
Okay. That doesn't sound like you.
I know. I don't know. I just would rather get out there, and if I can direct seed it when it's time, I will. And if I can't, I'll
Mhm.
go buy transplants and
Yeah.
plant those. So
Yeah. Oh, I
just
keep
kind of
walking.
simplifies things. If I had a greenhouse, I might feel differently about it, but I don't.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
just don't worry about that too much. But
Well, I keep walking through. HEB has a beautiful greenery section. I mean, you have to walk through it to get into the store. And they have all the herbs out. And of course,
mm-hmm,
further south down here, we can plant earlier than I know
mm-hmm.
y'all can and people in Colorado. But we're not home. And I think if I buy something and then we're going to be gone for 2 weeks and it's just why start? I have to wait until I'm always thinking,
Hmm.
okay, I'll wait till we've got a good stretch at home. And then when is that?
Hmm.
So we've managed to keep most of our plants alive over the winter. I say we, John.
Congratulations.
John did.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went to Menards this weekend looking for some flowers to put by the door,
Mhm.
and they had all the herbs out there. And I just like to walk by and touch them all and
Yeah.
smell my
Pinch a little
fingers.
one.
Yes. Oh, makes me feel so good. Yeah.
I
It's a
love
great time of
rosemary.
year.
Rosemary
Me
and
too.
mint.
Mhm.
Those are
Basil.
my favorites. Yeah.
Lemon balm smells amazing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Would you do anything this weekend?
Well, I spent the day with my sister on Thursday, and she always, this, I talk about it every time. She always plans all these fun things. And this time we did some watercolor, and she served us a really great healthy lunch. And then we went to her little hobby shed and we did some glass works. And there, look at this. I brought him so I could show you. How adorable is that?
Oh, cute. It's a little
It's
bird.
yeah, I have two of them. Here's the other one.
That's
See the little
adorable.
feet and the little
Uh-huh.
tail right
Yeah.
there. But what you do there, she either called them scrappies or scrappers. I can't remember, but you actually use scrap pieces of glass. So she
Hmm.
does a lot of stained glass artworks, and she even did a great big one for her kitchen window. I think I've talked about that on here, but she has drawers and drawers full of scrap pieces like this
Hmm.
and all the different colors. And so you just find a piece and you turn it into a little bird. You get the beak and you solder in the lead, and you can either solder on the eyes or use these squiggly eyes, which we thought made it a lot more fun. But
Hmm.
hers turned out great.
Did she make birds too?
Yes, yeah. So anyway, that was really really fun. And then she served this dessert that was also a Weight Watchers dessert. That even then, she just has a knack for making things special. So even then, it's a healthy, Weight Watchers dessert. She made it really pretty. It was so pretty. I took a
Hmm.
picture of it.
What was it?
It was kind of like it used Greek yogurt and sugar-free cheesecake pudding mix, and
Mm.
I don't know what else in the base layer. And then it had like the sugar-free cherry pie filling on top of that, and some kind of Cool Whippy kind of stuff on top of that. And then she took graham crackers and crushed them and sprinkled the crumbs on top of that. And it was, I'll share it. I'll get the recipe from her and share the picture
Hmm.
in the upcoming week. But it was a really good day. We had a fun time. And
I'm glad you get to do that.
I always, I look forward to it, spending the day with her. And she and I were talking about how in our Facebook memories, it keeps coming up through the years. If I ever got to visit with her, it was because we were states apart.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to it would be posts about being excited. My sisters got me.
Hmm.
And then when she left, oh, she left. The house is too quiet. I miss her already. All that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And it just makes us both so grateful that
Mhm.
we're nearby and
Yeah.
we can see each other. And it's not, when I walk away at the end of the day, it's not sad. So it's a huge
Yeah.
blessing. And I'm,
There's good things about both. This is something that one of my daughters-in-laws talked about, how when you live far apart, when you come, you stay and you're there. You
mm,
spend the night, and there are good, fun things. You stay up late, have popcorn, watch a movie, talk about things. You get so tired that you're delirious and you're laughing. So there's fun things about when you stay and
mm,
you're in each other's homes for 3 or 4 days, whatever. But then just the ability to run down the road, and like you're able
mm,
to do now that she's closer. And
mm.
that's fun too. So, it's just blessings all around,
Yeah,
regardless.
it is. And, in my mind, when I found out they were moving into the area, I thought we'd be getting together almost every day. I mean, I just kind of,
Hmm.
of course we would. Why wouldn't we? Or at least
Hmm.
once a week. But life.
Life. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing,
we're
but
both,
life.
we both have responsibilities,
Hmm.
and so it ends up being about once a month. Sometimes it's been longer than that, especially with
Hmm.
her cancer journey that she's been on. But about once a month we get together and spend the day together, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Good.
So,
Good.
how about you?
We had a shower on Saturday night for a young couple, a bridal shower, and it was kind of a different, usually we have the meet at the church building on a Sunday afternoon, and it's all the women, and just a
Mm-hmm.
typical bridal shower. But this, my friend Bonnie, she does event planning, so, and that's her job. So when she
Mhm.
does something from her home, and she does often, she's very hospitable, she and her husband Matthew, and she called it a fiesta. And she had all the stuff. I mean, she had like the serape table runners and had all of the fun colored uh like ceramic peppers and the little piñatas, and it's just very festive, and
Mhm.
had it all set up. And of course, she does like the photo backdrop that has the looks like an Indian blanket kind of thing with the big paper flowers. And so
Cute.
anyway, that's what we did on Saturday. Spent a lot of time setting that up, and then I took mom out to lunch. She wanted to have Mexican food, so we went to Rosa's. I think I've talked about that on here, and y'all don't
Mhm.
have Rosa's there, but
Mm-mm.
that's where she wanted to go. So we
Mhm.
went there, and it was just pretty much that was what we did all
Mhm.
weekend. So it was fun.
I noticed that you and I are both wearing bright colors today.
Yeah,
You with your purple and me with my hot pink.
we coordinate. I think we're
Yeah,
both excited about spring.
that's right. We kind of look like it.
Yeah.
Well, I know the last time on here I talked about the family studying thing and
Hmm.
how we were going to have the septic checks and stuff. We also went into town and met with somebody about some various housing options, and builds and trying to gather more information. And again, it's one of those things where in my naivety,
Yeah.
how do you, that word?
Naivete. I think
Okay.
it's naivete.
Okay. I just pictured it so much easier and simpler.
Yeah.
But even with the build itself, we really just need something simple and small. But our county has guidelines for you can't have low ceilings and you can't, like there's all these different rules. And some of the things that we looked at, I was researching ahead of time and the guy was letting us know actually in Warren County, you're not going to be able to put that on your property. And I'm going, what?
Yeah.
So
But it's my property.
it's my property. Yeah. So I feel like every time we take a step forward, we're also taking a little bit of a step backwards because there's complications or things we didn't know, and
Mm,
but we'll get there.
yeah.
We'll get there somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we were talking about earlier, there's to me mostly bad things about um HOAs and county requirements. I shouldn't say mostly because that's usually like a reactionary response that I have when they say
Mhm.
no or you have to do this, whatever. Like
Mhm.
Micah can't park his work trailer that he carries cabinets back and forth. He's not supposed to park it in his driveway for any length of time, really. And I keep thinking, if you work from home, and who
Mhm.
doesn't work from home now?
Mhm.
Just most people don't have physical things that you can see. But
Mhm.
then I also understand that there's good things that come from that too, because the land that we live on was, I think it started out as like 100 acres. That there was 300 acres that the three sisters, John's mom and her two sisters, inherited from their parents. And then, so then each sister got like 100 acre tract. And then slowly they sold off bits and pieces of it. But the subdivision that we live on, each each tract can have no less than 5 acres. So you
Mhm.
have, larger plots of land, and it also has some kind of restriction on it that it can't be further subdivided. And
Mhm.
I think that's in the rules that have been filed in the courthouse somewhere. So I don't know what it would take to actually change that.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you think about how many houses they can put on 5 acres now. And
Mhm.
well, that's not what we want in our subdivision. So up and down the road that leads to the subdivision, you haven't seen this yet, but there are two big, huge businesses now. One of them right across, down the hill from where my mom and dad lived.
Mhm.
They're big office spaces, and they're not ugly, but they're just these big, huge office spaces that people can rent. And then just down from them is a big metal building, and I don't know what's going to go in it because they've just been working on it this last month or so. And it, worries me a little bit about like our property values, but I also know that it can't be subdivided down any further than it is. And the land behind us is deeded as some kind of, something that will never be developed. So
Mhm.
there's good and bad things,
Oh
but
yeah, definitely. And I understand that. And it's funny that you mentioned working from home because some of the models, I guess you would say, had built-in workspace.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember like decades ago how some kitchens would have a little built-in desk, and that's
Yeah.
where you had your phone and your, mail system or whatever it was would be
Yeah.
right there in the kitchen area. Well, it's similar to that, except it's not in the kitchen. It'll be in a different part of the house, and it's almost like a corner built-in big desk with built-in shelves.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented on it. I love this little office area that's a built-in. And they said, well, we're accommodating the current trend of working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really given that much thought, but it's true. A lot of people can and do
Yeah.
work from home. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's just in an open space, or is it a room on its own in most of
It's
those
not a
little?
room. It's like a lot of them are kind of open space floor plan still.
Yeah.
And so, like one of them, you walked in and there was this big kitchen area and open living area, and you went left a little bit and there were a couple of bedrooms down here, but this um, like open space in the middle of them, where typically you might think of it as a reading nook, maybe,
Yeah.
back in the day, maybe you put a bookshelf and a little comfortable recliner there or something like that. Well, they've turned it into a little office space with a
Mm-hmm.
built-in desk and built-ins for
Yeah.
whatever you would file or, things like that. So
Yeah. I see lots of those
it's
things
neat.
that come across my Facebook feed, the things that they've done to existing spaces to accommodate for a little office.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm always intrigued by those pictures as they come across my feed, but I'm always afraid I don't click on them because then I know I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to get tons more. I'm even afraid to
Mm-hmm.
slow down on some of them. So I'm like scrolling and looking and looking and looking. But there's some ingenious ideas like um, cutting out between the studs and putting shelves,
Hmm.
finishing out the space. If you don't need, if it's an interior wall and you don't need the insulation,
Mm-hmm.
then they just cut out the space between the studs and build shelves. And so you have shelf space. Of course, it's narrow. It might
Right.
need to be certain sizes of books or whatever, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just interesting what they can do with existing space.
Well, one of the builders names that was discussed with us in town. And, this was a meeting with a real person, walking around, looking at plans, having a conversation, face-to-face conversation. One of the builders' names that he mentioned showed up in my social media feed the next morning
Yeah.
as an advertisement.
Hmm.
And it just, it wigs me out because I
Hmm.
thought I was not researching this online. This was a conversation,
Yeah.
and then that exact builder,
Hmm.
first thing I see in my feed the next morning is that bill. I showed it to Neil. I went, oh, look at this.
Yeah. I always wonder if that was always there and we just didn't notice it because it wasn't something we knew about, or
Probably.
is it really that they're listening? I mean, don't you have
Mm-hmm.
to have some setting clicked on your phone or your
And not
computer or
only
whatever?
that, but I've had Gary go through my phone and everything that can
Turn
be
it
turned
off.
off that would
Yeah.
track anything about me from my body temperature to my, whatever else it can do. I'm like, I want all of that off.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it is pretty freaky. And
yeah.
John tends to he stops on things and clicks on things and like, oh, you're gonna have all kinds of spam now. But he
Mm-hmm.
he didn't care. He just keeps, why
Yeah.
do I think I'm
Sometimes
gonna
Neil and
change
I will talk
anything?
about something and I'll say, I'm not looking that up because I don't want that kind of junk showing up as
Yeah,
ads in my feed.
I know. I've already got
You look it up.
menopausal stuff.
Exactly.
Don't
Exactly.
need that.
In other news, did you hear that there's a new Little House on the Prairie series coming out?
I think I saw that, but I didn't look more into it. What's
Mm.
it? When is it supposed to be like? What era?
Well, I think
Like,
it's the same concept.
oh,
It's just going to
okay.
be a brand new series with, of course, different cast of characters.
Hmm.
It looks like it's the exact same concept, built on the same books, same
Cool.
premise. Yeah, so kind of intrigued by that. And then the other in the news kind of thing I wanted to share was, did you see that this is BAR's 50th anniversary year,
Mm-mm.
the
Didn't
magazine
see that.
Biblical Archaeological Archaeology Review?
Hmm.
50 years this 50 years March made 50 years. So, and they had the whole backstory of, what's the guy's name? Herschel somebody, or
I don't know. You know
what's
better
his
than I
name?
do.
that first started it. And how it started was he took his family on a year-long sabbatical to Israel as a tourist
Wow.
back in the 70s.
Hmm.
And of course, just was so intrigued by everything and found all these reasons to go back. And that's how it all started. But
That blows my mind that the 70s was 50 years ago.
oh, exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was
Yeah.
exciting too. Mhm.
Well, we're planning to go back. Double two trips next March. So we'll be there. Well, John and I should be there for a month. And then, we started hearing news of stuff breaking out again. I mean, they're not ever going to get it. There's always going to be conflict over there. I'm not worried about that. But I think people are, and I get it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
understand. So they don't really want to be over there when there's fighting going on. There's always
Mhm.
fighting going on, but we're planning on going back. I'm really excited. It's been 2 years,
Mhm.
and
Neil's
I
been
just feel
following
for
it.
him.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neil's been following it too because we want to go back. And just recently, even he was telling me how much more open it seems in the different
Mhm.
groups and people he knows that have been over
Yeah.
there. And so that's
Hmm.
good news.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They need the tourism, so
Yeah.
they just need to get it all worked out.
Exactly.
I
Well,
came across, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, this is a different thing though.
Mine too.
Okay. So I came across this article this morning, talk about clickbait. It wasn't clickbait, but it was when I open Google in the morning to do Wordle. Sometimes things catch my eye that are in the news feed. And one of them was 7 outdated phrases that boomers need to stop using if they want to stay connected to the younger generation. So you and I are not boomers, but I thought it was going to be about what words not to say, like, oh, that's cool or groovy or
Hmm.
whatever. But it ended up being, I thought it was, it was interesting. I think it goes both ways. It's not
Hmm.
just that the older generation needs to quit doing this so that the younger generation won't roll their eyes at them. I think it's both ways. The younger generation, like we've talked about, could make things easier to facilitate a relationship with the older. But these are the things that we're supposed to quit saying. One of them is in my day, and I don't think I've ever said that. I mean, I've said things like that, like when I was
Yeah.
younger or whatever.
I think
But
I've said it as a joke,
yeah,
back in my day.
uh-huh. But usually when I'm saying that, it's I wish, it's like all these cool things that moms have now that we
Uh-huh.
didn't have, that like
Right.
I didn't have that in my day, but the author was saying that it's dismissive. Back in my day, it's dismissive. And then the next one is you kids have it so easy. And there's a lot of new gadgets and things that might make
Mm.
their lives easier, but they've also got a lot of
Yeah.
things like social media that
Oh,
makes
yeah.
life harder. And so I agree. That's
Mm.
that is trivializing. The next
Yeah.
one was back in the good old days. And have you noticed, looking back on some things, you tend to only remember, they called it rosy retrospection. You remember how, like when I look back on um, some tough things we've been through, I tend to kind of look at it with affection, like, oh, that was hard, but it was fun, and we ended up coming out strong or whatever. So this guy says, don't say back in the good old days because you're only remembering the good stuff and you're not remembering the bad things. The next one is that's not how we used to do it. And again, I think if I ever say that, it's usually because, oh, why haven't I thought of doing it the way you're doing it? And another one is you wouldn't understand. Another one is pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which sometimes I do think it's time for some of the younger generation and my generation
Yeah,
to
for
pull
sure.
yourself up by your bootstraps. And then the last one was kids these days have no respect. And that's such an overgeneralization because I know lots of kids that do. But anyway, it caught my eye. I thought it was interesting. I thought I was going to have this fun thing to tell you about. Don't use this word. Cool
Hmm.
beans. You say cool beans, and that's probably outdated. But I like it because I understand what you're saying.
Thanks.
Cool beans.
Some things I say I know date me, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
The word fits, the phrase fits, I'm using it.
Hmm.
That's who I am.
Yeah. And
I
people know
just
what you mean.
really
So,
don't, it's not like I'm going to hide my age
yeah.
by using a different vocabulary.
No.
Yeah,
John says things. He'll say groovy sometimes, and usually he's doing it to aggravate somebody. But I mean, who gets to make up the rules of what you're not supposed to say and what you
that's
can
right.
say?
Did I already say on here what Hillary Hammer said to me at our ladies retreat? I can't
I don't know.
remember if I had that conversation live with somebody on here, but um, at our ladies retreat recently, we were all playing games. Afterwards, we were playing Swoop, which is a really fun card game that Jennifer Harrison taught us all how to play. And so, you know, part of the game is you do something called swoop. And, I would go swoop, there it is, or I'd say swoop it good. Well, finally, Hillary looked at me and she said, your 80s are showing.
Ed, your point?
I know.
The 80s were fun.
Oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, well.
Yeah. It's like mom jeans coming back, and I never quit wearing them because that's just what is comfortable. So now they're back and I'm in style again. I just had to wait
Yeah.
the 20 or 30 years in between. I don't
Patience pays
care.
off. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I just don't care. Well, what else do you have? Anything? You were going to start to say something.
I was just going to say that I was going to mention Equipped again for
Mhm.
this month, April, and we're really looking forward to it. Looking up, we're going to be there recording one of our episodes and hope that as many ladies as possible who listen can come see us. And
It would be
we'd love
fun.
to see you there. Yeah. And you can go to Cumberland Trace Church of Christ's website for more information, to register, to see what's available, times, dates, schedule, topics, all of those good things. But just wanted to put another reminder out there and invite
Mhm.
everybody to come join us who can.
I'm excited to see the new building.
Yeah. Yeah. And see that too.
Hmm.
Yep.
And the water fountain that you said wasn't there that really was there.
Yeah. Two of them.
Yeah. And how many water bottles I can save the planet from.
That's right. We went to lunch after church yesterday and ended up seeing Ken and Sally Ware. They're some of our members at Cumberland Trace. I almost say Cumberland Avenue. We always have to stop and think because we were at
Hmm.
Lehman Avenue.
Hmm.
And she started talking about they do cousins camp. She's one of those grandmothers that you take notes from.
Hmm.
When she talks about her relationship, they're always involved in the lives of their grandkids, even though they're not local. And they go to their games, they go to their plays, they talk every day on the phone. And just listening to them, you just can't help but admire the relationship that they have intentionally cultivated for their
Hmm.
grandchildren. And I'm always thinking, take notes, take notes. But she was talking about they do cousins camp, and they do T-shirts every year. So they'll pick their color or their theme or whatever, and all the grandkids will have matching T-shirts for when they go to the zoo or whatever they're going to do, or they go out for
Hmm.
ice cream, or whatever it is that they're doing. And um, she, of course, takes lots of pictures and she plans all these things. And she ended up, when you can create like photograph books, you can
Hmm.
have all your photographs put into a book. Well, she does that for every single cousin instead of by the
Oh,
family,
cool.
so that when they grow up and leave home, they'll each have their own, to have memories of that summer's cousin camp. And so she ended up bringing two or three of them to church last night so I could look at them. But they're, about a little bit at like half. Picture a big photo album. It's about half
Hmm.
that size, and
Uh-huh.
they're hardback.
Hmm.
And it's got the pictures on the front of all of them and their T-shirts and the year and the theme, and
Yeah.
then you can go through it and look at all the pictures from the memories of it. But I mean, she goes all out. It's an amazing week for them. But one of the things that she said is she always feels like she needs to come up with something new and different, every summer. Well, we've done that. We need to do something new and different. But the kids are looking forward to the things that they do
Yeah.
every summer,
The
and
memories.
but
Hmm.
aren't we going to this, whatever
Hmm.
it is that they're
They
doing?
want repetition.
Aren't we going to this farm this summer? Aren't we going to go do, yeah? And they're just looking forward to those things that in their mind they associate with that week with their
Yeah.
grandparents.
Hmm.
So anyway, I feel like every time I talk to her about things like that, I'm learning,
Yeah.
and hoping that I can be even a portion of that kind of a grandparent,
Mhm.
with those kinds of
What is the
relationships.
age
And
range that of their grandkids? Do you know? Like, what's the
well,
youngest?
and she probably told me that just yesterday, even because I was asking about how young they started cousin camp.
Mm-hmm.
And she said they just have to be potty trained. She doesn't want any of them in diapers.
Yeah,
But if they're potty trained, they can come. But I know they've got all the way up through, I think one's going to be 19 now.
yeah.
So,
I would love to do that. So
mhm.
ours are 8 all the way down to 4 months. So we just need to do that, like with the ones that are, like you said, potty trained. But then Libby couldn't come and she would have fun there too. Anyway, I'd love to do that. That's such a great
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm. Mhm.
Speaking of learning from, I listened to that podcast that you talked about on one of the episodes recently. That was Lisa Bass interviewing Sally Clarkson.
It's
And
good,
like I
wasn't
told
it?
you, I cried all the way through it. Like,
Mhm.
and I think, and you told me, you made me feel better, just that we tend to look back sometimes with it's and remember the things that we wish we would have done differently, and we don't
Mhm.
remember the things that we did right. Or maybe we don't even know the things that we did right, but
Mhm.
that we need to put that in the group because other people need
Okay.
to listen to that. I think she was Sally Clarkson. Her voice did not sound like I pictured her. It's funny how you have this idea,
Yeah.
but she sounded like she reminded me of a woman. Her name's Carol Mayfield. I've talked about the Mayfield family and just laughing and talking about things that they did. And like you mentioned in the podcast, you said just having that afternoon time where you sit down and you play a game and have tea or Coke or whatever. And
Mhm.
because there may not be anything you can do about the bad stuff that's going on right now, but I mean, you might as well do something positive and just things like that, that she seemed so intentional, and not just intentional, but just the way she looked at life,
Mhm.
I think helped her family. So
Mhm.
we need to share that. Other people need to listen to that.
I made a note.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Are we ready to start topic?
Yes.
Okay. Today we are going to talk about, it was the woman that I read the quote from at the very beginning. I think I have it written down somewhere. Her name is Catherine Christie. And I'm assuming that she's some influencer. She's got lots of followers on Instagram, but she's a mom, a stay-at-home mom. And I just happened to come across this post because my daughter-in-law Alyssa shared it. And so I clicked on it and watched through it. And it began with a reel that she had shared, this woman, Catherine Christie. And it was just kind of like a little short reel of her doing mom things. And the caption was, I am most frustrated by my role as mom when I don't treat it like it's my job.
Mhm.
And so then the follow-up post, the one that Alyssa shared, was someone questioned her, what does that look like? What it practically speaking, what does it look like to say that you treat being a mom as your job? What do you mean by that? And so I thought it was so interesting. And it was not really something I did when my boys were growing up. I think in some ways I did, but I didn't ever verbalize that. This is my job. I would say I'm a stay-at-home mom and sometimes felt a little inadequate by that. Not all the time, but sometimes. You hear women say all the time, I'm just a mom. And everybody always says it's not just a mom. We hold each other up in that because it is such an important role in life. But so I want to make sure to say at the very beginning, this is not at all about the superiority or inferiority of moms who stay at home with their kids and moms who work outside the home. This is not, has nothing to do with that. This is only about for those moms who are home with their kids, learning to treat that as your job and learning to see it in a different light rather than just, rolling out of bed one day and reacting to whatever happens. rather than getting up intentionally and making sure that you're ready to honor these little people that God has put in your life. And how can you treat each hour of each day? And not, I'm not saying being regimented, but
Mhm.
just being careful and cautious and, using your time wisely. All those things that the Bible talks about, walking circumspectly with your children. So she had several different suggestions about how to treat momming. Is that a way of saying it? Mothering? When you're a stay-at-home mom, an SAHM, we call it. When you're a stay-at-home mom, how to treat that as your job. Did you look at it that way when you were home with the boys, or did you ever think about it that way?
I think I did, but I think that's because Neil was really good about reminding me of the worth of what I was bringing, because sometimes I would feel, especially when things were kind of financially tight,
Hmm.
I felt that whole, I wish I had marketable skills. I wish I could bring something to the table. I wish and he always was real good about reminding me about what I was doing was a job and
Yeah.
the value or worth that he saw in it. So I think that was very helpful for me and
Hmm.
helping me see that what I was doing needed to be treated that way, a responsibility that made, there's flexibility in being a stay-at-home mom, but also there's responsibilities there that makes it to where sometimes you do say no to other things
Hmm.
because that's a commitment in and of itself.
Yeah.
So I think that helped.
Yeah. I like the word you use, commitment, because it
Hmm.
is a commitment, staying at
Hmm.
home with your kids. And we use that phrase, staying at home, and you're not always at home, but being a full-time mother is a commitment, and it's can be daunting sometimes, but it's such a it I mean, I think about all of the ways, you've seen job descriptions of stay-at-home moms when you're a teacher and you're a nurse and you're a nurturer and you're a cook and you're all of these things. And it really is true. But I just thought we would go through the suggestions that she made. And the first one is to wake up before your kids.
Hmm.
And I thought, did I do that? I think, especially when they were little bitty,
Hmm.
they'd wake up super early. And I felt like, I didn't have time to put my feet on the floor. But the older they get, the later they sleep. And then there
Hmm.
comes a point when you drag them out of bed because it's 9 in the morning or whatever, and they have school to do or they have somewhere to be. But her first suggestion, she said to wake up before your kids. And she said, what job do you not? Set an alarm, get up, have your coffee, put your makeup on, whatever, just ready yourself for the day and give yourself the proper mindset and start the day off with a little bit of peace. And I have to do that now.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter usually what time we have to be somewhere. I will back it up by an hour and get up so that I can sit, pray, have my coffee, do whatever it is that I need to do just to get in the proper mindset. Wake up, just wake up.
Hmm.
And this is something that she said, the difference between me showing up as a loving mother, ready to fix breakfast, versus subpar babysitter who overslept and hates her job. That's why she gets up and wakes up before her kids. I've seen all three of my daughters-in-law do this. Two of them are stay-at-home moms. One of them has a job that's flexible. She works a lot from home, but I've seen them get up intentionally before. And, they, two of them have infants now who are not sleeping all that well. So it's not an exact science because you don't
Hmm.
always know what time babies are going to wake up. But I thought that's such an interesting idea. And for someone who likes their sleep, it's going to be tough. But just think about it, how important it would be to get up, pray about your day, think about what kind of organization are we going to have today? What do we need to get accomplished? Is there somewhere I need to be just to get organized? I think that's such a great suggestion to wake up before your kids. Did you do
Hmm.
that?
Some. And I was just thinking about how it, like you said, there's different phases and it kind of changed for me with those different phases. And when they were little, and there were interruptions in the night and sicknesses or whatever it was, and I didn't get good sleep. A lot of times when they were little, I just slept until I woke up
Yeah.
if I could. Like you said, a lot of times they just woke you up anyway because they were babies or whatever. But I
Mhm.
would sleep as long as I could because I needed to.
Yeah.
But I've always been that kind of person. If I get less than 7 hours of sleep for 3 days in a row, I tend to get sick. I'll come down with something or mentally I'm not in a good space or whatever. And it wasn't until they were older that it was easier for me to get up. And I've done that for years now, get up, a couple hours earlier, just like you, even if we have an early flight, I back it up so I can get up and have coffee and,
Mhm.
you know, think about life.
Yeah.
But so
Clear the
I
clouds.
almost feel like really what you need to do is look at how your body operates best at its optimal performance when you can be the most functional, when you can show up the most cheerfully for your mothering job, just like you
Mhm.
would any other job. And if that means getting as much sleep as you can so that you can feel good and function, then do that. But if
Mhm.
that means getting up earlier so that you can have some peace and quiet and, wake up with coffee before you actually have to have a conversation with somebody, you know
Mhm.
yourself best.
Yeah.
So, whatever it looks like for you to be able to perform the best, be at your optimal momness,
Optimum.
optimum, then do
Mhm.
that. Put the effort in for whatever that looks like for you. And if that means getting extra sleep, don't feel guilty about needing to get extra sleep.
Mhm. I feel like for me anyway, I was a night owl when the boys were younger. I'm not so much anymore, but I felt like life began for me when they went to bed, as far as being able to choose what I was going to do. If I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
sew or if I'm going to read or something that I wanted to do that I wasn't going to be distracted by their activities, then I waited until they went to bed. And they didn't go to bed till usually 8:30. And so from 9 until at least 11, sometimes later than that, I was up doing what I wanted to do. And I feel like, looking back on that, maybe I needed to rethink that a little bit and go to bed a little bit earlier. And I don't know, because you do need some of that time to do things that bring you life. But I think I probably was also a little bit selfish with my time too, and could have done better on planning, because if I had not been quite such a night owl, if I had been more intentional about my sleep, then I probably would have been a better had a better attitude in the morning about getting things done. Of course, we public schooled, so I want to say they had to be at school by 7:50. So back that up by an hour to get lunches made, breakfast, and then back that up even a little bit more to be able to wake up. So again, like you're saying, figure out what you need sleep
Mm-hmm.
wise, figure out what you need time wise as far as what you're going to be doing in the morning. I just think that getting up before your kids is a really good idea, because like with any job, you don't just, if you had to be at a bank at 8 o'clock, you don't roll out of bed at 7:55
Mm-hmm.
and then show up with your hair all mess up and pajamas on, whatever. So wake up before your kids. That was her first suggestion. I thought was good. The
Mm-hmm.
second one is similar. It's get dressed. And this reminded me of what I said few podcasts ago about make up your bed, because it gets you ready for the day, getting dressed. I'm, I don't know what it is. I'll get up, and especially in the wintertime, because what I sleep in is like a long sleeve t-shirt, and I'll put on sweatpants, and then I feel like I'm kind of set for a few hours, because I'll start working on something, I'll get on the computer and start answering emails, and I still have on my pajamas basically. And I just feel like I don't know what it is, and I just feel like I'm not really working because I still have my pajamas on. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Getting
Well, what do
dressed.
I think or what did I do?
Both. You have to say both.
I mentioned that one to Neil, and I was kind of expecting him to kind of snicker at me or roll his eyes, and he went, "You did that," and I'm like going, "Huh?"
Mhm.
But what I did do was I would make the bed, I always brush my teeth, wash my face. I didn't necessarily wear makeup,
Mhm.
comb my hair. I'm like, I was clean.
Before you left your bedroom?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
do that even now. I brush my teeth, wash my face, comb my hair, all that kind of stuff. Put on deodorant, just like freshen up. But I don't put on a nice outfit. I don't put on makeup. Like going out,
Yeah.
get dressed. I
Right.
just get clean, get dressed, and make the bed, get dressed.
Mhm.
And to me, that felt fine. And typically around the house, I would wear t-shirts and shorts in the summer, t-shirts and sweats in the winter, and
Mhm.
it just didn't really think. I talked to Neil about it one time. Do you do you think I should dress differently? Do you think would you be happier if I was dressed differently when you came home? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
But I will say, an area it did affect me. I think there's a difference between dressing up and dressing slovenly.
Yeah.
Like my clothes were clean. It's not like they were dirty or stained or I've been wearing them for 6 days or, things like that.
Mhm.
But um, I will say one thing it did affect is if something came up and somebody had a need that was immediate, it was a
Yeah.
lot harder for me to go meet it
Mhm.
because I wasn't dressed up, or
Yeah.
have makeup on. And in my mind, I'm going, Neil would say, hey, do you want to run with me to go visit so and so real quick? And I'm
Mhm.
going, ugh.
Not dressed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to hurry up and change clothes and put on some. So it did affect that for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. And I think especially because we had boys, there are certain undergarments that you have to put on,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be a little bit different if you just had girls around the house. You're not going to just walk out without having certain foundational
Mhm.
things on. But
Yeah. It was
it
kind of
sounds
like
like,
the house for me. We've talked about that
yeah.
before. I'm not worried about my house looking like the cover of a magazine and being
Hmm.
perfectly spotless. All I do is I look at it and go, if somebody were to drop in unexpectedly, would I be embarrassed?
Yeah.
That's my
Which has
standard
happened.
that's my everyday standard. I'm not saying I don't clean better when I know people are
Uh-huh.
coming over, but
Yeah.
that's my everyday standard. And it's kind of the same with how I would look. If somebody came by, would I be embarrassed?
Yeah.
Not that I don't care if somebody sees me without my makeup on,
Hmm.
but would I be embarrassed about how I look
Yeah.
if somebody, my hair all sticking out and
Right.
sleep in my eyes still or whatever,
Hmm.
that would be embarrassing. But
Yeah. Well, it
that's,
sounds like you do get dressed, and I don't typically now. Like I don't comb my hair or brush my teeth. And I mean, I have my coffee and then I'll brush my teeth.
mhm.
But this, I'm not stay-at-home mom anymore, but it has made me think a little bit more about, my office is right here with these windows that are right by the front sidewalk. And I've been sitting here in pajamas before when people drive up. I'm like, ah, and I have to run to the bedroom. John, there's somebody here. Usually it's a mailman or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But I do so much better if I get up, even if I don't do this until after coffee. But if I would just get up, usually I shower at night, but get my clothes on, comb my hair, wash my face, and then go sit down. And
Mhm.
I feel like I would be more productive. I think it's just something mental. And maybe
Yeah.
not everybody has that feeling, but this was just something that she suggested to get dressed.
Mhm.
Get up earlier than your kids, get
Yeah,
dressed.
I don't brush my teeth before coffee. I don't do anything before coffee. I mean, that's Neil brings me my coffee first thing in the morning and we go sit in the library together and drink
Hmm.
coffee. And then I
Then
go
that's
brush
when
my
you
teeth,
do.
wash my face, put on
Mhm.
my moisturizer, make the bed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So first is wake up before your kids. Second is get dressed. The third suggestion she said is to put your gifts to use. And then she's intending, what are you good at? Think about what you're good at. What shows your love and care for your family? Are you someone that likes to teach? Erin is a teacher. She got her degree in that, and I see it. I remember when Jackson and Emmy were like 2 and 1, and she would have them doing little word games and little learning games. And that was just something that she was and still is good at. Are you somebody that is really good with routine? And I think for some kids, that's very important, having a routine, knowing what to expect. In fact, I think more and more they have found that routine is helpful for kids. Are you a good cook?
Mhm.
Is that how you show your love for your family? Is that something that you like to get up and fix waffles? And what was it? You had Waffle Wednesday. You had that for your kids. I think that was one of the things I liked to do. Didn't do it all the time, but I think I've always showed my love for my family by cooking things that I know that they like. If your gift is organization, how can that be used in your role as a mom, in your job as a mom? Maybe you like to do handwork with your kids and you have these ideas of things that there's so many things on Pinterest now and other areas that I see. Talk about what was it we were saying earlier that we say to our kids in my day, we didn't have Pinterest to
Mhm.
give ideas for things to do, but sensory activities or I remember something as simple as pipe cleaners in a bowl that was what do you call it, a colander turned over that one of my daughters-in-law gave the kids a handful of pipe cleaners and then they got to thread the little pipe cleaners into the colander. And it was just something, tangible, fun, and it kept them busy for a little while, things like that. Are you a creative person? Is this something that is your gift? And when you think about any job that you go to, you don't necessarily get to make the routine. Someone's telling you, I need you to fulfill these responsibilities. I need you to follow this routine. I need you to be here at a certain time and do this. But in your job as a mom, you're the one that gets to make the routine. You get to say, from 8 to 9, we're going to do this. From 9 to 11, we're going to do this. You make that schedule. And I think that's kind of fun if you get to
Mhm.
do that. And so putting your gifts to use. So what do you think your gifts were when you were momming it full time?
Uh,
Put you on the spot.
I know. I did like to cook.
Hmm.
So, and I love music. And so that was a big part of our music, reading, literature, all that kind of played a big role in our things that we enjoyed or focused on. And but
How old were the boys when you started homeschool? Like, did you start
we
kindergarten or
started
did
from the
you?
very beginning. Yeah, we didn't intend to. We had them enrolled in kindergarten, had already met their teacher, took Gary to tour the classroom and all that kind of stuff. And then we found out they sent home some paperwork talking about some things that they would be teaching as part of the curriculum, which we completely did not agree with. And
Hmm.
anyway, so last minute, we decided to homeschool, which is a big
Yeah.
panic moment for me. But we thought we'll just do it this year and see what happens. And we pretty much did that every year. We'll just do it one more year and see what happens,
Hmm.
And so we
But you didn't do
homeschooled.
preschool. You started with kindergarten, right? So they were like
Yes.
five-ish when they started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you have a certain routine that you followed?
At the beginning of every year, sure.
And then it falls by the wayside.
Pretty much every
Yeah.
year, all these grand plans and the new schedule, and this is what it's going to look like. And
Hmm.
that would last maybe a month. And then we kind of settled into what really works with our real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I even think when I was looking at this, there are some moms who love to go and do and like hitting all the museums. There's one in San Antonio called the Dooseum, and there's all kinds of hands-on things. Courtney
Mhm.
loves to do those kinds of things with Libby and
Mhm.
Sophie, and she's really good at planning out zoo time and things like that. And so I feel like that's a gift, is being able to
Mhm.
coordinate stuff like that. And then there are others who, I want to start at 8:30. We're going to do this. We're going to have a little quiet time reading from 9:30, whatever. Organization is their gift. That was never really my
Mhm.
gift. Of course, you know, we didn't homeschool, but had small children for a good length of time in our home. And so I don't know that I ever really thought about intention. I wasn't really intentional about what am I good at and how can I use that in my role as mom. So I think
Me
it's
neither.
something to think about for moms out there.
Yeah. The only thing we were really consistent with schedule wise was quiet time.
Yeah.
Every single day without fail. And when
Hmm.
they were little, it's because they napped.
Hmm.
And then as they got a little bit older, they got away from baby napping. It was just everybody goes to their own space for
Hmm.
quiet time. And if that looks like a nap for you, great. If that looks like you just reading in your room, that's great too. But here's our window. And,
Yeah.
and then I could do whatever I needed to do or wanted to do during that time. So,
Hmm. Well, that is number 4 on this list. Interesting that you just brought that up. She says take a lunch break in every job. Any job, you're going to take a lunch break. And she said, guard it with your life. And it doesn't necessarily, she didn't wasn't saying that it had to be at lunchtime. She was just saying there needs to be at least an hour. And I think this would depend on how old your kids are, because
mhm,
little ones aren't going to do 2 hours alone in a
mhm,
room unless they're sleeping. Yeah. But if they're little, it could just be 45 minutes. And Alyssa does this. She sets a timer, and Turner has the playroom that she goes in, and she can see the timer. It's not anywhere she can touch it. It's sitting outside the room. And then Alyssa does whatever she's going to do. What I've seen her do is pick up the house, but what this woman says is not housework. She said, "Do
mhm,
not pick up the house during this time." She said, "You need to do things that bring you life, whatever that is." And she said, basically, you're recharging for second shift. So you've had your morning, and then you've got this long stretch, and usually it's the stretch where people get cranky and hangry, and dad's coming home, and it's a tougher second shift. To me, was always tougher, that time between noon and 6 o'clock. But she says, don't do housework. She said, sit in the sun. If that's what you need, go outside, sit in the sun, read, rest, eat your lunch, eat something, just do something that you love, and be quiet. And I
mhm,
think I I I should have done that. The boys took naps, but it would be, I can't remember what age they were when they stopped taking naps. There was always somebody taking a nap, I felt like, but there was always somebody not. But I think with this, the way she's talking about it here is everybody at the same time. And again, I know if you've got little bitties, you can get them on something of a schedule, but you have to be a little more flexible about that. But if you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, you can say, everyone goes to your room. I'm setting a timer. You don't come out. You don't talk to me unless there's an emergency. And I think you have to have a discussion about what constitutes an emergency.
mhm,
um, Aaron and Jordan had a little, it wasn't a clock, I think, but it was a puppy. And the puppy stayed red. There was a little circle on his belly that was red. And if it was red, that meant you don't come out of your room until it turned green. I can't tell you how many times I heard them say, is puppy green? Puppy's still red. You have to go back to your room. And I think it just helps your sanity,
mhm,
because you need a little time to regroup, to pray again if you've had a rough morning, to think about, I mean, we're going to have to do some things differently. Maybe you need to get a phone call in. Maybe you have an email that you have to answer, something like that. But what she says, guard it with your life. Everyone takes a rest. Everyone goes to their own corner. And I think, again, probably you have to think about what's best. If you've got two that play together well, can they play together, or is there going to be fights breaking out and you're going to have to go in there and break the fights up? Or does everyone just need to go? I feel like it would be best for everyone to go to their own space.
mhm,
They can read, they can draw, not on the walls. I'm sure there are things that are going to happen, but I thought it was such a great idea to take a
mhm,
rest. Everyone takes a rest.
mhm. Yeah,
Did y'all have
that's
naps?
when we did. And when they were younger, as they got older. And I was just thinking that I hadn't thought about this in years, but when they were little, very little, I can remember using quiet time to read when they were reading in their room. And because I remember I'd say to myself, I'm only going to read one chapter, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'd get to the end of that chapter and I'd go, okay, I'm just going to read one more chapter. And now I look back and think, how did I even have time to do that? Because I don't even do that now, and I don't have kids
Yeah.
in the home. So,
Hmm.
and we would always have a great big basket full of library books. Almost once a week we'd go to the library and they'd stock up on whatever their current
Yeah.
interest was. So they would grab books from the library basket to take to their room and lay on their bed and either read or sleep or whatever they wanted to
Hmm.
do. But
Yeah.
it was just like you say, it's I think it was good for them too, of course. Everybody needs some downtime and kind of reset time, but especially good for a mom just to, if you have things that you want to do, and catch up on or touch base with somebody at that time or whatever, or
Hmm.
just rest a little bit. I just think it's good for everybody involved. A little, like
Hmm.
you say, a little sanity.
Yeah. Restore the
keeps,
sanity.
yeah,
I
keeps your
think
mood good.
too that it's good for kids to be alone, to know how
Hmm.
to play without having to be entertained, to
Hmm.
entertain themselves or to be content being by themselves.
To
And
think.
mhm, some kids, they like that, others don't. But I think everyone needs that. As you get older, there's going to be times that you are by yourself, and to be content to be by yourself, I think is a learned behavior for some,
Hmm.
maybe not for everyone, but uh, this also made me think about when you said grab the basket of library books. One of my daughters-in-law has a basket that she leaves on her island, and it has snacks that they can always have. They don't have to ask. It might have apples or fruit snacks or whatever. And that I wish I had done that because I feel like I was constantly being asked, can I have a snack? Can I have a snack? And just trying to think of things that they could have that weren't going to spoil their dinner or whatever. So a basket full of things that you're okay with them having, and they don't have to ask, they can just go. Okay, so we've had number one, wake before your kids. Number two, get dressed and get ready for the day. Number three, put your gifts to use, figure out what you're good at. Number four, take a break and guard it. Number five is no phone. This would be a tough one these days. You and I didn't really have this issue because we didn't have mobile phones or cell phones or whatever you want to call them. And think about it on any other job situation. And, it's very annoying to me when I am in a store and someone that is checking me out or whatever pulls their phone out and looks at it. I think that most of the time is probably against the rules. I don't know. But any job that you have, I think most of the time they're not going to want you to be on your phone because you're not doing your work if you're on your phone.
Hmm.
So, for moms, don't haven't you seen this? If you have your phone out, like with your grandkids, and you're better at this because I think you don't like it. You put yours away. You don't like that distraction. I struggle with that more because I tend to be curious about who's trying to get a hold of me, and I'm just more curious about things. But I think I have seen, if I'm on my phone, my grandkids, they want my attention or they want my phone, which I don't give them, but they want my attention more if I don't give it, if my attention is elsewhere. So I think
Hmm.
moms probably have this. Uh, I just think they become more needy if they see you on your phone. She suggests keeping it in another room the whole day and just leaving it upstairs or leaving it in a different room where it's not in your pocket all the time, where you're not tempted by it. And she even said if you want pictures, you can use a digital camera, use a different kind of camera, or use a phone that's not attached to any other, just an old phone that can take pictures. Um, I think that this is really sound advice. I
Hmm.
think it's advice that most people are not going to take because they can't be detached from their phones for any length of time. But I think it's something that we really should think about because
Hmm.
kids need our attention, not our phones.
Yeah, and that's for sure one of the things that I wish I could go back and do differently with our kids. We did have phones throughout their teen years, and
Yeah.
I remember very clearly, even before smartphones, you could still text on your phones.
Mhm.
All the time spent texting, answering texts, sending texts, and even before that, I would say I spent too much time on the computer just with emails. And, there were always reasons to look at a screen, no matter how far back you go. Once
Right.
television came on the scene, too much screen time with the television, too much screen time with just the whole email capabilities that we had or work or whatever. And then, and then the phones came along and anything that pulls us away and we're so captivated by it and consumed by it. And I mean, it didn't take long at all for me to look back and be filled with regret about how I wish I had the things that I felt like I had to do or needed to do or wanted to do that involved a screen while my children were still in the home could have easily waited until later,
Yeah.
very easily. And that for sure is a big regret. And I can only imagine now how difficult it is because we use our phones for so much more than just communication. We use it
Mm-hmm.
for everything.
Yeah.
And there's somebody came out, I put it in my wish list on Amazon. I was listening to a podcast about it. And this one lady, I think I've mentioned that on here before. She's some huge influencer with literally like hundreds of thousands of followers and been on all these morning talk shows and all that. But she decided to undigitalize her family, like no smartphones whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was like, how do you even function? and
Yeah.
in a world so reliant on that kind of stuff, how do you even function? And she ended up writing a book about it. Raising kids, basically, it's not this title because I think somebody else has this title, but it's basically raising your kids in the digital age, kind of a thing. But I haven't ordered it yet, but I want to. And that's another one where I'd love to order a copy to send to each of our kids for their families. But again, you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to make it seem like you're like,
Yeah.
hint,
Suggesting
hint.
for,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
imagine it'd be especially hard now to try and do that. I mean, I feel that
Mm-hmm.
even when just watching the grands, because
Mm-hmm.
I want to be intentional about them not seeing me on my phone.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. It is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a that's going to be a tough one to swallow. And maybe there's different ways of accomplishing that. Maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
no phone. Maybe you use it during your quiet time, or you're intentional about them seeing you putting it on top of the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that you have my attention, that you are my job, not just my job, but you are what I'm focused on. God gave you to me. I want to be all in with what I'm doing with my children.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be perfect. No mom's ever going to be perfect about that. But just thinking about it, being intentional about it, that word that we use so often is what we're talking about here. I know we need to
Yeah, well,
kind
and
of start.
practically speaking, phones are, and everything that we do on our phones are so much a part of our life. I think there's balance there. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with having this blessing. It can be a blessing or this capability. There's a difference between your kid seeing you pick it up, do what you need to do with it, and put it back down, put it
Mhm.
up, and you always being on your phone. Your
Mindlessly
head is
scrolling.
always down on your phone and taking pictures and uploading pictures or whatever it might be. There's just a difference there. When
Yeah,
your kids look back, what are they going to remember? The top of your head, you know?
right.
Or, of course you used it just like any other tool in your house, but that doesn't mean you were staring at it the whole time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in not letting it use you, but you using it. We
Yeah.
use social media to do good things. We're trying to do something good with this screen time that you and I are doing,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes some thought and planning and prayer and intentionality. So phones, big deal. The sixth one is steward your capacity. Kind of hurry through this one. She said, mothering is taxing. Don't make your job harder than it has to be. Make the decisions. And she's just talking about that margin in your life. What do you say yes to?
Mm-hmm.
And now, again, talking about social media, the way things tend to be now, you have lessons for everything. You have games, you have play groups, you have all these things that we try to fit in and squeeze in to make our kids well-rounded. And are we really doing the right thing? So she says, steward your capacity. Think about what being a good steward of your children looks like, and what do you want their minds on, and who do you want them to be around, and what exactly do you want influencing them? And that's what I think she's talking about here. And how important is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel very strongly about that one. That requires a lot of what's your purpose as a family, a lot of
Hmm.
prayer time, a lot of honest evaluation. And I think there's a lot of pressure, oh, so much pressure
Yeah.
on young families about what it's supposed to look like and what your kids are supposed to be doing if they're
Hmm.
going to be successful. And hmm, decide that for yourself. Is that
Yeah.
really true? Is that really what's best for you and your family? Look at how much it's costing you, not just financially, but time wise.
Hmm.
Is it keeping you from things that could be better choices? Just a lot to consider.
Yeah. I remember one of the things that struck me so much when they graduated, we would have a banquet, usually, with the rest of the other high school seniors at church, or we would do something here at the house. And when we would do that, everyone would set up a table
Hmm.
with a big poster board thing that has their accomplishments listed. And I remember thinking to myself, what is it that I am the most proud of about what our boys have done and accomplished? And yes, maybe they were part of the National Honor Society. Maybe they graduated this number in their class, whatever. But what I wanted to put on there were different things. I wanted to put the things that I was proud of, their character.
Hmm.
And maybe they were part of a society that they were nominated for because of their character, not because of their athletic ability or their academic ability. And that was always so much more important to me. And I hope that I think that they understood that's where I was, where my intention and my thoughts and my desire was for them, is to who they're going to grow up to be and the character that they're going to have and the man that they're going to be and the leader that they're going to be, rather than what
Hmm.
college they went to or what GPA they had. It wasn't about getting into this elite school for us. It was about becoming a man of God. And that to me is what this is about, stewarding what, I think she's talking a little bit about where all you focus your time, but I also think it's about where you focus your attention on where you're guiding your kids and who you want them to grow up to be. So, yeah, that's an important one.
Hmm.
Then the last one is evaluate. And this is something, you have an evaluation in your jobs, whatever you do, you're going to have your boss that's going to meet with you maybe once a year and say, okay, here's where you've done really, really well. Here's some areas that you need improvement. Maybe you didn't do this so well. And you have to do this for yourself. Maybe you and your husband sit down and say, okay, is our home peaceful? Is it chaotic? Are we functioning well? Is there something that we need to do? Maybe we feel like things are out of order. We need to change something up. Are we accomplishing our goals? And do we have goals? Have we sat down and had that discussion? I tend to be someone who flies by the seat of my pants, and I need to be more focused on being, setting goals, making lists. You like to make lists, and I like to do that more, but just being intentional about the things that you want to accomplish in your home. This is still ongoing. You and I, even
Hmm.
now, need that, but especially when kids are young and at home, have goals. Know where it is that you're going and what your focus is and who you want them to become and where you want them to be, what you want their attention focused on, and are you accomplishing that? So
Hmm.
evaluate.
Yeah, Neil just preached a sermon called Jesus's Tips for Time Management. And he was talking about his ability to see the big picture. He knew why he was here and he knew where he was going. And when you've had that sit down with your family and you know what your big picture is, and for all of us as Christians, it's to go to heaven. And
Mhm.
you know what your big picture is, that helps with evaluating all those other things here. So
Yeah.
here's what our week is going to look like, and here's how we're going to fill our time and the choices that we're going to make. Because when your children leave home and you're looking back, really, your mom's heart is only going to care about that. I mean,
Mhm.
there are some temporal things that are fun and exciting and you can be proud of, and, accomplishments and talents and skills that we nurture in our kids. But ultimately, when you look back at how you mothered it's going to be about, do they have a heart for Christ? And
Mhm.
are they living for Christ now? And is that the foundation of their home now? And is that where they're headed now? That's in the grand scheme of things, that's the big picture. And once you keep that in mind, it helps with all of those other little choices that you make. So Neil
Yeah.
called it the brushstrokes. When you see the big picture, then it helps with all the little
Mhm.
brushstrokes that you're putting onto that big picture.
Mhm. Yeah. See the big picture. That's a great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in well doing, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up or grow weary. All the different translations of that. But think about how, you and I've been there. The days are long, but the
Mm-hmm.
years are short. But we have to be careful in how we walk circumspectly with an eye to the future, with an eye to what we're doing on a daily basis with our kids to help them become who God wants them to be, to help them develop an interest in having their own relationship with God, because they're going to grow up. Your daughters are going to become moms. Your sons are going to become fathers, most likely. And what an awesome responsibility. There's not no other job that has the same kind of rewards that mothering does. So I hope that those of us, I know you and I are finished in a way. We're still moms, but we're not stay-at-home moms with small children anymore. But I hope that we'll all think about how we can do better at being careful with the role that God has given us as being moms in our homes. Okay.
Yeah, good talk.
Anything else you want to add?
No. Mm.
All right. Do you have something good for me?
Oh, I do want to add one more thing. I just
Okay.
noticed the one thing I jotted down. I not too long ago I saw this. It was artwork, and there was a comment that was made over it that was said, thank you, thank you, but I have something important planned that day. Thanks for the offer, but I have something important planned that day. And then the artwork, it said that day, and the artwork was this mom with cookie dough that she was rolling out on the kitchen table, and her two little kids were there cutting out the
Mm-hmm.
shapes.
Yeah.
And I love that,
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, that this is a job, this is a commitment, this is the something important for
Mm-hmm.
that day that we've decided is what our purpose is going to be for this time of our life. And so anyway, that was the only thing I jotted down that I thought I'll see if I can find that and share it in the group. I have no idea
Yeah.
if I'll be able to because I just ran
Yeah.
across it, but it was really cute.
Just that is a commitment. Maybe it's better to, instead of saying this is my job, to say this is my commitment. This is what I do every day. Because I don't know, something about the word job has the feeling of boredom or monotony or something like that. But there's nothing monotonous about being a mom except if we make it that way, which,
Mm-hmm.
any job is going to have that. Okay, good discussion. You have something good?
I do. So mine's a little bit different today, but Romans 3:23 says, we've all sinned and we fall short of the glory of God. Well, Neil's class this quarter on Sunday mornings is about what does that mean? That's the name of the class. And it talks about all these different words that we might use, but what does
Mm-hmm.
that really mean? Like propitiation.
Yeah.
But in yesterday's class, he mentioned Romans 3, verses 24 and 25, the following verses, and took a couple minutes to say, let's just camp out here for a minute. What do these words even mean? And it was so good in that these two verses are jam packed. And so I
Look
thought,
at all those words.
yes, but my something good for you is do this faith building exercise for yourself and take Romans 3, verses 24 and 25, and just sit down and jot down the words. Take a few minutes to look up what they mean biblically so that you can understand the picture and what's being said, because it's beautifully powerful. And so, right on the heels of we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God, it says, and are justified by his grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness because his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. And it goes on, but that's my something good for you. Just camp out on these 2 verses for a few minutes and write down what those words mean, and then go back and read it again. And just be in awe and filled with gratitude over God's goodness toward us and what He's done for us.
I would love to see your list, what you jot down, how you come
Okay.
up with it. You should
All right.
share that.
Okay.
Love it.
What
All
about
right,
you?
mine doesn't feel nearly as significant. It's just a recipe, but it's a really good recipe.
Oh, good.
We're kind of at the end of soup season, but this one I tried this week and I loved it. Here's a picture you can see.
Oh, that looks
It is
good.
called Mexican street corn white chicken chili. I
Yum.
love Mexican street corn and I love white chicken chili, and so it's combined. I made this for a friend who had a medical procedure last week, but it made a ton. So I kept some, gave them some. I ate it 3 nights in a row. Got a little bit tired of it after the third night, but it was still good. It's chicken, onion, jalapeno. I left the jalapeno out because they're from Tennessee and I didn't know if they would want that heat, but I would put it in myself. Chicken broth, you add sour cream, you add Monterey Jack, and the author of the recipe said you can use cheddar, Monterey Jack, whatever. Garlic, of course, oregano, chili powder, sweet white corn, but I found some corn, frozen corn that was Mexican street corn. So it already had some of the lime, chili flavor to it. Fresh
Yum.
cilantro, lime, fresh lime. They said cornstarch and water, but I ended up not doing that because that thickens it and I didn't really want to thicken it. And then on top of it, after you've done, made the soup, then you put the cotija cheese. You can put bacon crumbles, tortilla strips, avocado, anything like that.
That
So
sounds really good.
it was yummy. I like lime and chicken, and all of those flavors are some of my favorites. So I'll share that in the group next week.
And it sounds like it'd be really easy to make that Weight Watchers friendly with just a few adjustments.
Yeah, you might. I don't know if you'd want to put the sour cream, but that may be you could use light sour cream, or you could just add it to your own bowl rather than stirring it into the soup before you serve it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I enjoyed the discussion as always.
Me
And
too.
such an important topic, and so grateful for those of you out there who are full-time mom in it. It's an important role, very important. And we'll be praying for you. Okay. All right. It was good to see you, and until next week.
Keep looking up.
All right. Love you. Talk to you later.